These glasses are the closest I will ever get to serving. In tribute of Brat, I tried to find the greenest color thing I could. Not only is it the wrong shade, it's also promoting the wrong artist, so do what you want with that. I'm here to talk about Brat by Charli XCX because I just listened to it and I want to share a few random thoughts I've been having. These are really annoying to wear, actually. Is Brat a 10 out of 10? I was planning on making a video just talking about how I felt about the album today, and then I saw that Mr. Fantano dropped his review, and I thought that it would be easy clickbait to be like, hey, let's talk about this person's score because people really care about the score. So that's what I'm doing, but I'm also going to say a couple other things that I've noticed. Firstly, is this album a 10 out of 10? Straight away I'm going to say I'm trying not to sort of give things scores, so I'm not going to give this a score. What I'm going to bring up is when something gets a 10, especially when something is getting a 10 from a creator that has a legacy that he knows he's holding up. Like, it's a 10 from someone who knows what his impact is. What is that 10 doing? I think that 10 to him is reinforcing that something has made a proper change to the culture. It's reinforcing that every single track on the album is a banger and that there are no misses. And it's reinforcing that these creative ideas that are coming out of it are not necessarily unique, but like groundbreaking in the way that they are executed. There's been so much discussion so early that it's kind of hard to address this because obviously people want to make money. I'm doing it, everyone else is doing it. We're talking about stuff that's relevant now because that's when people are most interested and that's when people click on stuff, right? This album hasn't had the chance to stand the test of time. It's literally been like 4 days since the album came out when I recorded this. However, a few things off the bat about this record. Aesthetic, instantly recognizable. It's the biggest just middle finger to like 20-30 years of girls being expected to like dress themselves up and present themselves in a certain way and use their image as their aesthetic. And the album cover is powerful because I think it's representing, it's coming through in a time where like a lot of women are pushing back against that stuff, which is awesome. I would imagine if you were 20 years old and you were a girl and you grew up being born in 2004, where you would be now, you would have spent over half of your life seeing like how people present themselves on social media and seeing the perfection and seeing the standards that people set up. And this album goes and just gives like a fat middle finger to all of that. The straight up refusal from Charli is awesome. I don't know, I think that aspect's really cool. And it's reflective of what people are feeling. This album is reflective of where a lot of people are. I think that's why this one in particular seems to be like a resurgence. I'm seeing so much more hype for Brat than I saw for Crash, which was her last album that came out a couple years ago. Crash, she was kind of marketing as this like, I'm going back to being a pop star era, because the one before that she'd released How I'm Feeling Now, which was her like a full hyperpop lockdown kind of thing. And so Crash was sort of her bouncing back from that. But all of the hype I saw around Crash was in like pop fan circles. Brat, I feel like, is bleeding over into like general TikTok a little bit. It's bleeding into the general public. People are talking about it. The other criteria for something being a 10. Are all the songs bangers? Super subjective. I'm not giving a rating, but I will say I love this album. It's awesome. I dig the sound of it. I dig the messaging of it. I saw a comment a few days ago that someone had left on some YouTube video talking about how Charli seems to be able to put these really simple lines together that can be viewed as sort of stream of consciousness party kind of lyrics in one sense, but in another sense also weirdly profound and kind of representing like a loneliness and a sadness and a frustration and like I don't know. The album represents the sort of the duality of like partying and having a good time while also just being like anxious and panicking really well. I think a lot more people are feeling that way than they were maybe 15, 20 years ago for a long list of reasons that all amount to just being the world is wild and weird and is doing a lot of stuff that we don't like and is making us anxious. She sort of balances that lyrically really well. The other thing about this being a 10 is, does this feel like the peak of the ideas that she's delivering? Does this feel like her creative peak? I don't want to make a call. I don't want to be like pigeonholing an artist into what their peak is. But I think up to this point, she's sort of had her pop side. She's had her like experimental electronic side. This is the point where they've been fused together in an aesthetic that feels like it sums up the majority of what she's done over the past like decade or so. This feels like the quintessential Charli XCX experience so far to me. And for that, I think that's another reason that might explain the 10. And all the songs are bangers. So I is really sad. Talk Talk goes hard. Club Classics goes hard. 360 goes hard. Von Dutch goes hard. I think about it all the time. I don't know if goes hard is the terminology I'd use for that one, but really do like that one. Charli's like capturing like or expressing various aspects of herself, possibly more so than she'd ever done here, I would even say. She's being more personal than ever before. She's sort of like risking more in terms of what she's willing to give in her lyrical content. The album's more powerful because of some of the vulnerable things that she shares that work in like a really connectable way. And I would imagine that would be doubly so for people that can relate to having a uterus. I'm specifically thinking about, I think about it all the time when she's talking about like, you know, the idea of womanhood and feeling like a place in the world. And now I'm thinking about it just now. Like early in the album, she's talking about whether she deserves chart success and stuff. And it's really interesting that later on she begins to talk about in that song, viewing her place in the world as relatively small compared to like the cycle of the world and of life and death and her birth and stuff. It's just a really whole experience. It's a whole experience with a really strong aesthetic. The other thing is, it's a catchy aesthetic. It's one color, it's not this color. And it's this text that is reminiscent of like 20 years ago when people were making movie maker videos and just posting them to YouTube before YouTube was like businessy. That's cool as well. This album is forming, I think, a cultural movement that seems to jump outside of just the Charli XCX world. It could just be my algorithms making me think that, because obviously we all get personalized content. But I really think it might be that way. One last thing. I was going to talk more about this, but this video is getting long enough and I'm going to edit it soon, so I don't want to have to edit too much out. Stan Twitter, if you're watching this, don't send death threats to people. That sucks. I saw some fans in response to like Sympathy as a Knife. It was being played at a listening party and they were like shouting like, "Die Taylor, die Taylor." That's not cool. I don't think that's what Charli was going for. I think Charli was very specifically in that song. She was just expressing how Taylor Swift, if it's about Taylor Swift, which probably like in the song it sounds like Taylor Swift is just being Taylor Swift and that's what's making Charli XCX anxious. It doesn't sound like Taylor Swift is actively doing anything. And Charli does kind of frame it in that way of it being, she doesn't give you the details. She doesn't make it a thing. She just sort of says like, this is how you've made me feel. It feels, and that's how it feels with every celebrity that's referenced on the album. It doesn't feel like it's being played for drama, which it could play for drama because the internet loves drama. But the references to other celebrities feel like they feel real because they just feel like reflections of the people and experiences that Charli's had. They don't feel like they've been exaggerated for the album to benefit off of the fame of referencing other people. It just feels like honesty. Sympathy as a Knife to me feels more like some of Charli's insecurities are being addressed in that song. I don't think Charli would want you to be like that, so don't be stupid. Overall, my personal thoughts on it were, I liked it a ton. Production was insane. The vibe was just insane. I really enjoyed it. I'm not going to give it a score, but I understand the 10. And don't tell celebrities to die. Have a good evening. Bye.
Knife? Huh?